Okay, we'll
You
do
might
that
be
one.
interested in the fact that this jacket is here. This was my jacket that I wore when I got out of the service in 1946.
And here he is wearing it.
Yeah.
And this is Steve's dad right here, David Fairhart.
And I was in what they call the Military Intelligence Language School, which was a school that was begun in actually before Pearl Harbor happened. It started in San Francisco at the Presidio. And once all the Japanese people were evacuated out, they couldn't leave soldiers here, even if they were soldiers. They were Japanese soldiers, Japanese American, okay? But they were here, so they couldn't leave them here, so they started the school in Minnesota. And so that's the school that I went to learn the Japanese language. I was in a 9-month class, and if you guys think school is hard sometimes now, when we went to school to learn the language, we started at 8 o'clock in the morning. We studied until 4 o'clock, did military things for a couple of hours, went back to class in the evening at 7 o'clock, stayed until 9, and studied all this period, and we just couldn't learn enough during this period. So we used to cover our head with a blanket and use a flashlight to study in order to learn everything that we had to learn the Japanese language. It was very difficult. So I became a translator interpreter, and then I was sent to the Philippines, and the war ended because of the atomic bomb that was dropped, and so I was sent in along with many of my fellow translators and interpreters into Tokyo within a month after that, and that's where we did translating and interpreting in the occupation forces. And this little insignia on here, it says GHQ. That was the insignia for the general headquarters of the occupation forces, and that was, the head was General MacArthur. He was the head of the occupation forces. Of course, he was the tremendous general that really brought an end to the war in the Pacific. So that was my experience during that period of time. At the same time, after the war had started, after we were put into the camps, and they had designated us, you know, they had a draft. You guys know what a draft is? Most of you
they may
don't.
not. This
It's
military draft.
Yeah, it's a military draft. It's a selective service, they call it. And when you turned 18, you had to sign up, okay? And that was required by law. And so once you signed up, you became 1A, and that meant that if you passed the physical, they would put you into the service. Okay, that's what the draft was. Once 9066, the executive order by the President Roosevelt was signed, they could not keep us in that same category, so they turned us from 1A to 4C. And 4C category was a category for enemy aliens. And that's what they called us, so we were no longer part of the draft. Very shortly thereafter, about a year after, they decided that the Japanese people weren't that bad. Maybe they could make a military unit out of it. So they got volunteers from the camps, from the concentration camps. Remember, these are concentration camps that had barbed wire fences around with guard towers, and that's where we were. They came in and recruited people for the military. They got volunteers from the camps. My friends went into the service, but most of them came from Hawaii, and they started what they call the 442nd Regiment. The 442nd Regiment became the most decorated unit of this size that came out of World War II. One of the incidents that happened that showed how tremendously they were able to fight was the rescue of the Lost Battalion. Okay, there was a Lost Battalion of Texans who got surrounded in France and just could not escape from the Nazis who were surrounding them. And so the military eventually ordered the 442nd to go in and try to get them out. And the 442nd went in, fought for a week, and eventually broke through and rescued the Texas Battalion. When they went in, they rescued, the battalion had only 200 men left in the battalion. But the cost to the 442nd in order to rescue them was casualties of over 900, either dead or injured. So it was a tremendous battle in order to rescue the lost battalion. So that's one of the stories of World War II. Is there anything else I need to talk about?
No, that's good.
We've run out of time.
Oh, yes. The other thing was that the other people you mentioned last period, the other folks the Caucasians who went through the program.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we went to school to learn the Japanese language, and we were either 6-month students or 9-month students. The young men that knew Japanese pretty well became 6-month students in order to learn the military terms and all that. I didn't know that much Japanese, so I was 9-month class, but I got out and became language specialists. At the same time, there were schools in other places, like at the University of Denver and University of Michigan had Japanese schools where the young men could go train to learn Japanese. They were 2 years in school. They had to go for 2 years to learn the Japanese language. And then when they got out, because of I just want to illustrate this, because of the prejudice that was shown even in the military, was that they became officers. They became officers immediately upon graduating as language specialists. We who learned language in the 9-month period, the 6-month period, became corporals. And I don't know whether you know about military rank, but a non-commissioned officer is a corporal. That's a grade above a private, and then become a corporal, then a sergeant. So it was really low down on the scale, but that's what we received for graduating from the language school versus the Caucasian people that went to college and took 2-year class and then learned the language. Anything else?